suddenly there's cuneatus, fasciculus cuneatus, and then you go through the same thing when you're learning about the thalamus and all the other, there's little jelly beans, and there's things that look a certain way in the brain, so that when you're doing certain cross sections, things begin to appear and other things begin to disappear as you go through all the various sections. So that's kind of interesting detail. The other thing that I could discuss here, I guess I'm on the air, huh? What else is going on here? The look at this. This is a similar, although slightly different, example of that, where we actually have lots of levels because we're longitudinally presenting here in terms of the skeleton and the vertebra and the ribs in this case. Notice that this is rib number one. Rib number one is the attachment site for scalenes. Anterior and middle scalene allow us to have this little triangular shaped opening for the brachial plexus. The brachial plexus, of course, when I was pointing to a deltoid, remember last time I was asking the nerve that innervates the deltoid is a branch of what cord? Right, we know this because the nerve that innervates the deltoid, of course, is the axillary nerve. And the axillary nerve is how the posterior cord ends. It ends by bifurcating or branching into the axillary and the posterior, the thumb side radial. Thank you. See, my entire education is based on thumbs, right? So the radial nerve and the axillary nerve are the end branches of the posterior. Here's the posterior. Posterior to what? Right? And so posterior to the axillary artery. Okay? So we're going to have now, for posterity, recorded my complete dyslexic meltdown. Right? And you can see how I saved myself by going to a thumb to remember my entire history of anatomy, 21 years of anatomy teaching, all based on thumbs. Okay, so you have to start someplace. There has to be a point of reference. Right, so the other detail here that's so nice, this is one of the best representations of the sympathetic ganglion chain. And you can actually see the little rami communicantes here coming off of the spinal nerves. So the spinal nerves, remember, are just long enough to fit through the intervertebral foramen, and then they branch. The anterior branches are all going to come around here when we have these nice ribs in place, and they're going to come around in the subcostal spaces. So starting up here also, we get to see the cranial nerves and all of their beauty, and there's even kind of a little bit of brain stem that you can see, a tiny bit of olive right there. So you can see, there's a little bit of pons, and there's more pons, so you can get an idea of what's going on from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's all around the pons. At 6 at the bottom, you go off to the side, and I don't know if you can see that on your screen or not, but if you go way off to the side here, you'll notice that there's a 7 and an 8, and then coming down behind the olive, there's a 9, 10, 11. In front of the olive, there's a 12. They have them nice little Roman numerals. Somebody did some calligraphy there, I guess, or I don't know how they got those in there. We have a nice spinal cord expansion here at the cervical level, and then you come down and you see a further sort of widening or enlarged area in the lumbar region. There's the conus medullaris down here, the cauda equina. You can see the beginning of psoas major coming from the levels here at the lumbar region and coming down. People who do sit-ups with their toes tucked underneath something, they're going to be actually pulling on the lumbar portion of the spinal column. Okay, so that comes down all the way to the end. So I think we'll we'll stop it at that point.